Okay, we're having a little problem with the live streaming right now. So we'll just be starting in just 1 minute here, folks. Apologies for the delay. Okay, folks, thanks for joining us. We had a few more people join us there, but I think I'm just going to double check here and make sure that we have everyone in that has signed up. Okay. Looks great. Perfect. Well, thanks for joining us. Can everyone hear me okay? Thumbs up, everyone? Perfect. All right. My name is Rob Hosier. I'm a communications officer here for the City of Kingston. I just want to thank you all for joining us today. We are going to be starting here in just a few seconds. We're hoping this will get live streamed. We're going to work on it as we get started here, but it's definitely getting recorded, which means that we're going to have a record of this meeting that we can actually upload to YouTube afterwards. So you'll always have access to it as well. So thus video microphones and chat features has also been turned off to protect your privacy. A little bit of technology troubleshooting. Sometimes technology troubles happen. There's a list of common challenges on Get Involved Kingston, including if your audio or video aren't working, but you can also adjust your view options so you can see both the presentation and the members of the project team at the same time. If your internet connection goes down, you can always call into the meeting using the number I have highlighted up on the screen there with the meeting ID. So at the worst case scenario, you can definitely hear what's going on and definitely interact with it as well. Once we get it up and running on YouTube, we'll have it live on there, but we also have the recording there after the meeting as well too. We'll do our best to help you with the technical problems, but sometimes the easiest way is to log in, log out. I'll be keeping an eye in the background on the participants and to make sure that I admit you when you come back. So if you just want to take a quick second and jot down that phone number and that meeting ID just in case, or take a screenshot. Following the presentation, we'll be having a point for asking questions. And if you have a question at any point during the session, you can use the chat function. You can ask your questions there. I'll be monitoring that. And you can also raise your hand to ask your question verbally as well too. So while we're in the question period, we can definitely use those two functions to get your question in play here. When the question comes in, I will definitely redirect it to the project team and we'll sort your question as soon as possible. If we don't get to all the questions for some reason, all the questions will be summarized by the project team and we'll definitely be responding to them and getting you that answer as soon as possible. And you can follow the results in that in the Get Involved Kingston and on the project page. The process for raising your hand to speak and ask a question is pretty easy, but if you have a question or comment, please use the raise hand function or use the comment. We have our guidelines participation on the screen right now. If there's anything additional you'd like to have added to the guidelines for this engagement session, please let us know now. Seeing no raised hands, no comments, and to confirm that everyone agrees, we'd ask if you're not in agreement, please raise your hand during using the raise your hand function. Thank you so much. Seeing no objections to the guidelines participation, we'll proceed into this online engagement. And now I'm going to pass it over to Ruth Nordegraaf, who's going to start our presentation.
Thank you, Rob. Just to check that everybody can hear me okay. Yes, thank you. Well, thank you so much for taking the time today to come and be part of this process. I just wanted to quickly point out the staff attending this call. Heather Scranage is the manager of housing and homelessness in the Housing and Social Services team, and Joanne Boris is the housing program administrator who is specifically focusing on the homelessness system in the community. And I'm Ruth Nordegraaf. I'm the director of housing and social services. So today is the first of two Zoom sessions that we have set up to try and really gather as much information from you on basically the task that Council has provided us in their special meeting on May 12th. And what I was hoping to do is give you a little bit of an overview of what we've been tasked with, and also the work that we are, the work that's happening to try to really come back to Council with really a kind of a fact finding and an overview of the information. Again, I'm very appreciative of you joining. I know this is a very complex and challenging topic that I know our community is trying to address, just like many other communities across the community. So I can appreciate that there are a lot of different opinions and a lot of different ideas on how we best move forward. And that is exactly kind of what we're trying to get at today. Again, we're really trying to kind of follow through on kind of the request from Council to then come back to Council with a report with the information. So on the next slide, Rob, if you wouldn't mind, we again, and I think for those of you that may have joined or listened into the Housing and Homelessness Committee last week, there will be a bit of an overlap, but I just wanted to make sure that people do have all the information. But today, again, we really want to give you an overview of kind of the Council ask, some of the work and activities that we have done and are in progress, some of the next steps, but then really have hopefully a lot of time today to hear from you, feedback, questions, concerns, ideas. It really allows us to capturing this information in a Council report that we then will then Council can use to make their decisions. So on the next slide, and I do recognize that this might be a little bit small, but I will walk you through it. So we'll touch on the motions, and then we will touch on kind of the work and activities. We want to highlight the current encampment information, some examples from other jurisdictions and some learnings. Some of the initial findings from our engagement with people that are unhoused, our engagement with partner agencies, other city departments, then obviously touch on today's engagements. And we will share some initial draft of kind of rights and responsibilities, the relationship with the Encampment Protocol, some operational kind of considerations, and also wanted to highlight some other solutions that we would think we could bring forward to Council that ultimately will also look at kind of a more longer term housing solution. And then obviously some next steps and hopefully, some good conversation on some feedback from all of you. I know this is also part of the Get Involved page, but on May 12th, council held a special council meeting, and really kind of, I think, or really as a result of the Encampment Protocol that was put in place in 2021, in April 2021, and kind of the future of the pause that at that point was in place due to the advice from public health in late 2021 due to the COVID increase in the encampments. So council passed two motions. The first motion was to come back with kind of an alternative to find more permanent and safe housing and report back to council by the end of Q 2022. And the second motion, which is a little bit more comprehensive or a little bit more detailed, and if you wouldn't mind, Rob, to go to the next slide, basically, or a motion that was presented to council with the request from staff to explore the potential of encampment pilots or an encampment pilot in the community. Council asked a lot of different kind of asked us to look at a lot of different components as part of that pilot. If you wouldn't mind going to the next slide, Rob. It not only included kind of looking at a location close to the ICH and Bell Park. Council also requested us to look at low cost kind of facilities or amenities that are needed. It also asked us to come up with some simple regulations and some, requests around how to be able to continue or using that or have the pilot be safe and tidy. And it also asked us to look at some of the bylaws, including also some of our own findings. Council asked us to report back, and if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide, Rob, to look at report back with workable locations and details as per the previous points, and also look at the budget considerations. And I know I'm going through this a little bit fast, and I really, if you haven't done so, invite you to have a closer read, and happy to answer any questions there. Again, this is council directing staff to look to do the work, and our job as staff is to come back to council with as many findings as possible. On the next slide, so with that in mind, I wanted to walk through a couple of slides on kind of the current status and some of the findings. So as of June 1st, we know that there are just over 200 individuals in our by name list, and also provided some demographics on those numbers. Of those 200, there are quite a few folks that are in, for instance, shelters or in transitional housing or sleeping with relatives, but about 70 to 80 people that we are aware of are currently living in encampments. That number is fluid and continues to be fluid, but this is kind of our best estimate in working with our partners and just the kind of ongoing work. Again, I kind of alluded to this, but we do have an encampment protocol that does prohibit camping in public parks or public properties. It was established in April 2021, but it was paused during the height of the pandemic at the end of 2021. Police and bylaw have continued to interact with encampments via regular safety checks. Some encampments have continued to be moved along. Sorry, you can go to the next slide. So we have also mapped out kind of location or kind of the kind of various areas where we know we typically have encampments. about half of the individuals that are unhoused and are living in encampments are in the Bell Park ICH area. We also have a number of people in the Inner Harbor and downtown core, but we also have people that are living in other or camping in other areas in the community, both in the East and the West End. And some of these are also on private properties that we as a city do not necessarily have, you know, the protocol does not necessarily focus on private properties. So really just to kind of map out the situation. And the next slide. Again, like we were asked to work on this on May 12th. So what we have done is also do a review of other jurisdictions. By no means has this been a very given the timelines, we've tried our best to really look at as many options of, as possible and that we were able to find. We obviously, we've seen that obviously homeless encampments are not new, but actually going and approach it with a sanctioned encampment is a more recent phenomena in Northern America. We also have found some information on kind of operational structures and how typically these encampments have been formed. But ultimately, how communities are dealing with managing encampments or evicting them is really very kind of individualized. In Canada, we know of a few examples in British Columbia where there is some formal sanctioning of homeless encampments. And more recently, actually last week, Halifax passed a report where they are moving forward very small sanctioned locations where residents can camp. In the United States, there are a few more longer established or kind of sanctioned encampment approaches. And on the next slides, we've just summarized some characteristics. Again, also kind of thinking back to some of the council asks. So first of all, we really have seen that in most of these examples, especially those in the States, there's much more than kind of low cost services that are being offered. So you really would, it really is almost an outdoor shelter approach with many different services that are provided. It also does typically have a dedicated operator or a staffing model and a governance model. And it also typically eliminates any other campsites in the community. There definitely are in all of these very clear rules and responsibilities and code of conducts in place. And what we're really seeing is that either this approach would be a stopgap for a limited time with an exit plan, or it is really more of an ongoing alternative, such as like an outdoor shelter. We also are looking at some of the costs and we'll also be reporting back to council on some of the costs that we've been able to find. So the next slide, we also obviously, and essential, we're asked to engage with the people that are unhoused in encampments. We actually worked closely with our partners such as the ICH, Street Outreach and others to craft some questions that really are providing a guideline for some of this engagement. And also I know that, and we're incredibly grateful for this work, that the ICH has worked really closely with some of the ICH neighbors to also do some engagement. And we have actually, or we're really trying to align all of that information into one kind of overview that we would like to report back to council on as well. And on the next slide, again, we've just summarized a couple of initial trends and findings. We are still spending a few days to continue to get the information and continue to engage. Overall, we do hear from people that are unhoused that there's definitely a desire to have more of a place where people don't have to continue to move from. There definitely is kind of different desires for locations. There's definitely people that would like to be close to the integrated care hub in Bell Park, but others that actually prefer not to be there. All folks that we have engaged with definitely identify also the importance of rights and responsibilities. We have also utilized their inputs to update the rights and the draft kind of rights and responsibilities that we've crafted, and we're also trying to make sure that they have a chance to continue to have input on that. Again, amenities, more than necessarily potentially low-cost amenities, have been identified as crucial, and also very kind of clear guidelines of how to use these encampments. And then also folks that are on house have identified some concerns around safety, and how to continue to ensure safety in encampments, garbage, and ultimately kind of governance of encampments. So really great information, and we continue to get some great feedback. And I know time is very limited, but we're very grateful for that information and for the community efforts in gathering this. So the next slide, we also continue to meet with our partner agencies. We've had 2 meetings so far, and we have 1 more meeting in the next 2 days. And again, it's a very kind of a similar kind of, or some similar trends. So again, I think partners are all very worried about the risk of drug poisoning or overdose if clients are not in proximity of services. There's definitely also some current concerns around, not creating this and having folks leave their housing if we would have a sanctions location. Also, again, very clear on the need for clear rights and responsibilities and oversight. And also, and I think that this is a broader statement, that this is should by no means be a solution, but potentially could be a stopgap to bring some further structure into a situation that we are in, but also really continue to look at investing funding in reducing homelessness in a longer time and not just managing it. And I think we can all agree that that's ultimately what I think everybody wants. There is some concern about the risk of pushing some individuals further out that don't feel comfortable in a sanctions encampment and would rather be in a smaller scale or individual area. Also some questions around, again, the staffing and operating model versus self-governance, and if that is what that would look like. Again, to really make something like this successful, to really have a good plan in place around intake and keeping track of people and space. Garbage issues, again, I think I'm sure some of you on the call have a lot of frustrations around garbage and kind of the impact and the really need for an approach around that. And last, but I think a really kind of important theme is the health and safety of folks that are camping, but also for neighbors and users of the space. So again, a very kind of lots of kind of items across the continuum. So with the city, our city colleagues, we have also continued to work with our colleagues to gather as much information as possible. We have done some environmental sampling of locations in Bell Park as to really determine some of those pieces. We are working on, should council want to go ahead with this, what a site plan of potential locations could look like. We're gathering costs based on, kind of the desire to look at a low cost approach. We're looking at how would this be operationalized? How would we be able to support people in these locations, and how can we enforce the rights and responsibilities? We're putting together some information about the bylaws and liabilities, and also some thoughts around health and safety. So the community engagement, and I recognize that this is a fast-moving process, and we don't, have many different options, but we've tried to really, as we've identified to council as well, and in this kind of short time frame, to provide as many options. And again, we're open to any one-on-one conversations in the next few days as well. Last week, we heard from our Housing and Homelessness Advisory Committee members. Today and Wednesday, we have sessions for you to comment. And we also have, the survey at the Get Involved page. And as I mentioned, we're happy to receive any additional emails or any additional conversations if you feel like that would also be something you would be interested in. So we have crafted a set of simple regulations, again, informed by many of the engagements, and hoping to also hear from you today on that. We have identified a potential kind of size of a campsite being 15 by 15 marked on the ground. We have identified that folks utilizing this, should the council approve, need to be registered with a provider as part of an intake. Some clear expectations around garbage and disposing of garbage, clear expectations around pets and pets being leashed, no motorized vehicles permitted, and also no other structures, and only tents allowed. Excuse me. And the next slide, just to continue, no campfires or cook stoves permitted in accordance with the bylaw, no harvesting of firewood, some rules and regulations around the use of alcohol or smoking or vaping only on folks on the campsites, and some quiet hours, again, in accordance with the noise bylaw. How the use of amenities, we do, obviously, again, is based on kind of council's direction, anticipate that, this would not be monitored. So definitely be important to have some clear expectations. And also violence of any kind will not be tolerated and will result in folks being ineligible for a site. I do want to point out that, as I mentioned, we do have an encampment protocol that's currently obviously paused, but should council want to go ahead with a sanctioned pilot or encampment pilot, then we would also update the encampment protocol, basically potentially alternating the timeframes for trespass notices, likely reducing that time frame, which is 48 hours right now. And also the potential of including some additional explicit prohibited areas for camping. These, again, will come as a combined with various or with the council reports. The next slide, and I'm almost there because I really want to make sure we have a lot of time for conversation. Again, this is a little bit of a summary. We, again, based on council's direction, are looking at 1 to 2 locations in the Bell Park and ICH area, and a potential for a third site in another central location. Again, hearing back from members of the or people that are unhoused. Based on the numbers, we would like to look at, again, bring back to council of, options for a potential capacity of about 60 people. We want to bring back considerations for cost, amenities. We will bring back information about environmental considerations and potential remediation, enforcement, health and safety of residents of the campsite, but also obviously of the broader community and how this all would work together. Some information on the time that's needed for the setup, and also the intake process and access. We are also because again, I think we can all agree that we are responding to council's request, but we also really would like to focus on actual longer term housing solutions. So we will also include in the June 29th report some options for other housing solutions, including some additional cabins, sleeping cabins, a proposal on kind of including additional transitional housing with some of our not-for-profit partners. And we're looking at the potential of setting up another facility for some emergency housing solutions. And in addition, we're also looking at some other potential extensions of partnerships and capacity with other partners. So that will also be part of the report. And because I think we really would like to continue to have that conversation and really look at how as a community, this really challenging situation can be addressed. And I also think it really requires a community response. So just wanted to add that as well. So few dates. Today and on Wednesday, we have a community engagement session. We know typically the clerks will be will probably be pushing us. Typically the reports will need to be out by Wednesday before the meetings, but we're hoping to, or obviously we'll be able to push that a little bit, but aiming for the second half of this week to have the reports as final as possible. And then there will be the special council meeting on June 29th. And again, as mentioned, we will just really want to gather as much as information and feedback from everybody, and really looking forward to hearing from you today, so we can really provide all of that back to council so they can consider the options that they've requested for us to look into. And then obviously after June 29th, depending on what council decides, we would move forward with any implementation. So that's me very fast going through a lot of information. And again, I recognize that this is a very complex topic. I know some of you on the line have been incredibly helpful in raising a lot of issues in the ICH Bell Park area. And I know that is a very challenging position to be in. I think this is really an opportunity, again, to capture some of your concerns, your questions, your ideas, and gather that in response to council's request. So Rob, I don't know if this is kind of the cue to just, but I will let you kind of lead that.
I should at least let you give your voice a quick break after bringing us through all that great information. Thank you so much, Ruth. And yes, we're definitely open up to questions at this point. We have two ways, like I said, from the outset as well, that we can ask questions. You can throw them in the chat, and I'll get to them and I'll read them out loud, and I'll ask our experts the question verbally. Or you can raise your hand and I can unmute your microphone and we can chat about it live as well too. If multiple hands are up, I'll basically take first come, first serve, and I'll just be going. If there's questions that are kind of all in one kind of area, I might jump to that question just so we kind of say on the similar theme, but other than that, I won't be augmenting the questions at all. So it looks like if our experts are ready, it looks like Mary has our first question with her hands up. And so Mary, I'd ask if you unmute your microphone and ask your question.
Okay. I have a few questions. I am particularly concerned with Bell Island and Bell Island Caretaker Circle and the campers and fires that happen on Bell Island. And I don't see any mention of that as a distinct location. And I would like for that to be included somewhere. My second thing is, obviously, the integrated care hub is really needed for the addicted participants. And I'm wondering about the addicted people being given priority and the other non-addicted people not being there, because it's putting them at risk for all sorts of different reasons, the different subgroups that are there. A third thing is what happens if people don't abide by the rules that are being set out? I mean, is there anything in place like warnings or, I didn't see anything in place advertising any of that. And then the idea possibly of a fence. My concern, of course, being president of the Friends of Kingston Inner Harbor, is that many members have spoken to me about the fact that they just don't go to the park anymore. They feel too scared. They feel too scared that it's a family place and they're putting their children and their pets at risk by going there. And so perhaps if there were a fence around and the tents were within the fenced area and there was an entry and exit way of getting in and out of the fenced area, that might make other community members feel safer because, of course, the integrated care hub workers are amazing and they do save lives. And it's so sad that it's always, as who was it? The South African guy saying, always pulling people out of the river without finding the causes of the flooding in the first place. And the other thing that I don't really see here is some kind of formal agreement or arrangement or desire to look at remediation possibilities, like what can actually be done on a longer term basis. And, can some research be done on places like Italy where they have had some success with the heroin addicts there? Can kind of longer term help be somehow put into the mix here. And I don't see anything addressing that either. So those are my general concerns, really. It seems like a start, but it's a limited start, and it would be good to include all these other concerns.
Okay, thank you so much.
And also, I mean, just one last thing, about Quattrochi's, like Joe has had to spend so much money on security, and the neighbors there have had a terrible time too with, everything having to be locked down and the fire and rescue people coming at all hours of the night. And I'm really happy to see that there is a coming together of community and integrated care hub, because I think that's essential, that we work together to solve this problem, not that there be kind of, because you care about the community, therefore you don't care about the addicts and you're an enemy kind of approach, or vice versa, and it really is important to come together and try and work together to solve this.
Mary, thank you so much. You've had some I think about 5 good questions there, and I saw the experts were writing them down furiously. So I think we could probably go question by question pretty soon here as well. But also thank you for sharing your observations and experiences as well too. Ruth, Heather, or Joanne, does anyone want to take I believe the first question?
Thank you so much, Rob. I can start, and Heather and Joanne, please jump in if I missed anything. And again, we are taking notes, and all of this will be part of the report as well. So council has that information as well. So Mary, regarding the Bell Islands and caretaker piece, there is obviously an existing agreement, and we are always in our bylaw, and other city staff are always making sure that agreement gets as much as possible. I mean, it's something that obviously would be not an option for people to go to, and we would continue that piece. But I think it's really important to add that to the report as well. So thank you for that. On the priority for people with substance dependency, I think that is, again, another item that I just want to take note of. I think Rob is kindly providing us with the term experts, but I don't necessarily want to say we are, because I think, again, to your eloquently way of saying it, Mary, it is really and there really is a need to kind of, as a community, all come together to try to address this. If people don't follow the rules, again, that is, a very fair point, and we know that there are challenges with many situations. Again, from what we understand from what council's motion gets at is if people don't follow rules, and we would need to enforce, and people would not be able to stay. So that would be the intent of this approach. Fence, I think there's a couple of different thoughts there, but I think it's a good item to add as well. I know there are some concerns about the fence. I know we get a lot of concerns also about fencing that is currently put up in the area, which is being removed or utilized for the building of shelters. So I think it's a good point, and I think there's some we can think about, or we can add that. I think there's definitely also a few concerns about some fire safety, and also some concerns about, or there's I think two sides of sides of that, but definitely something I think is good to add. Longer term solutions. Again, I think we all know that this is a much broader systemic challenge that requires additional housing solutions, additional healthcare solutions, and really kind of tying all of those pieces together. And that definitely is our ongoing focus. As I mentioned, we will be including a few additional solutions, which hopefully will be able to support some individuals that are currently in encampments to actually move into housing solutions. Realistically, though, we will not be able to have that, will not happen overnight. So I think that again continues to be an ongoing community effort. The integrated care hub is obviously, as I think most folks know, been provided with a two-year provincial funding, and there is a consortium of partners with Addictions and Mental Health Services, Trellis, the Kingston Community Health Centers in Providence that are working together on kind of really looking at how do we move people, how do we support people at the integrated care hub, but also how we move them out to actual solutions. But definitely a good point. Yeah, I feel like that's it. Heather or Joanne, have I missed anything, or would you like to add?
As we cover it, is there anything else extraneous there, Mary, that I know a lot of those items were noted by Ruth, and they're going to be followed up on as well.
Thank you.
Perfect. We have, folks, we have a question from Taylor through the chat. Has a permanent location be found for the sleeping cabins? Regarding the possibility of adding more cabins, would they be located with the existing cabins, or would that be a separate project? And it looks like Ruth, you're going to take this one. Oh, no.
I think Heather, would you want to take this one?
Absolutely. So thanks very much, Rob. So at this time, we don't have a permanent location for the sleeping cabins. We're still working on that with our other city team members in facilities management, construction services, and real estate, alongside others. And we'll be bringing something back to council later this summer. With the possibility of adding more cabins, they would be located with the existing cabins at this time. There's capacity at both properties. Center 70, where the cabins are located now, and Portsmouth Olympic Harbor, where they'll move back to later this fall to have a few more cabins at each of those locations. Thanks.
Perfect. All right. And Taylor, if you want to follow up in the chat with that, if there's anything further, please let me know. And we have Fred with their hand up. Oh, I think you're still muted.
Hi.
Oh, there we go. Perfect.
Thank you. Well, thank you for the opportunity to contribute some ideas. The first thing I'd like to do is just quote from a letter that I wrote in June of a year ago, June the 16th. Residents and business owners are ongoingly subjected to a dramatic increase in petty crime, excessive noise every night, foul language, fighting, copious amounts of garbage everywhere, public intoxication from drugs, continuous trespassing onto business and private property, and the desecration of Bell Park lands through illegal camping, dumping, and damage such as hacking down healthy trees and burning down trees. In the past year, despite the so-called success of the ICH, nothing has changed. Ruth, you've alluded to the missing fencing around the properties in the last few weeks, despite the fact that that was brought to the city's attention through correspondence. The fencing is still missing. There's numerous pieces of fencing laying in the woods. Some of it's probably been sold. The theft from the city compound continues. When you bring a lot of people who've already, through the circumstances, and I'm not saying there's any blame in here, I'm just saying, when you bring many, many people who have already chosen not to follow the general rules of society, and you bring them in to a community, you just aggravate the problem instead of resolving it. My first question would be, who in the city is responsible for contacting the provincial government to try and increase the number of rehab centers that are available to these people? I have recently started engaging with the ICH staff to try and understand what they're doing, because I keep seeing the same people come in and out, in and out. I see dozens of people every day sitting around. I'm glad they're fed. I'm glad they're sheltered to some degree, but nothing seems to happen. And I have been advised that they're just the process of getting people into the correct programs that they need. There isn't a timely way of getting them into a program before they relapse back into drugs, and then they're back into the safe injection center. So it would seem to me that I would rather see more effort put into pushing the provincial government into addressing the problem. So my question would be, who is responsible within the city? Is there a team of people who are pushing the provincial government to provide faster availability of resources for people who genuinely want to get off of drugs? And from my experience in going through the park for the last couple of years, and this is a quote many times, of the 28 empty encampments that I visited, 27 of 28 have drug paraphernalia in them. So that is a fundamental problem of why people are in the woods. They would prefer, I presume they would prefer to buy their drugs than be housed. And if they have a drug addiction problem, well, that is probably the most important thing that we, so if the hub is so successful, why are the number of people using it? Why do we now have an overflow of roughly, I think I counted my last trip through the park a couple of days ago, was about 40 tents in the park. And just to let you know that there are a lot of them will not be part of a formal encampment. We've seen like just this weekend, there was an encampment of 6 different groups in one area down at the east end of Bell Park. They know something is going to be happening soon, so they've dispersed, and they're now hidden very cleverly in 6 different locations in the park. And they've left an enormous pile of trash, as usual, where they were. And they're getting the help from the ICH. So where is their reciprocity? There isn't any. They're interested in survival to do what they need to do. So the idea of them following rules and regulations, and yeah, I would hope that they would, but they've demonstrated already in the past year, you know, that is not a part of how they operate. So my critical question from that little overview is the hub getting support to move people into the proper programs, and do the programs even exist to get people out of the hub into a self-sustaining lifestyle down the road? Is, you know, there seems to be a big gap there. The programs are out there, but the hub can't get people in. And that's why we've seen an increase of nearly, why are there 40 tents now? right now in Bell Park.
So it seems to be a disconnect with what you're seeing and the available services, and you're seeing a disconnect between those two things.
Yeah, absolutely. And we still experience all the things that I read out that I wrote to Councillor Hutchinson a year ago. The only thing that's changed is the nudity. I didn't include nudity. Last year there was a lot of nudity going on, and this year that seems to have slowed down a bit for some reason. But all the petty crime and the other things I've listed are still ongoing, and they will be ongoing. So why is the neighborhood not being factored into it? The ICH should never have been put into the place that it is. The impact on the local community has been a disaster, and now we're going to extend that.
So, Mr.
Bruce,
Penley,
it looks like you have your hand up. You can respond to a few of these.
yeah, and thank you so much again, Mr. Penley. I know you've been very eloquently, and I can appreciate your frustration. I think I'm trying to, well, your first question around who at the city is responsible for kind of advocating for more rehab or more actual solutions. I think we all are, like, not only like the city staff and based on our roles and the ability that we have to connect with the provincial funders. I know, and I know I can speak for myself, like, with the, I know this is not like a very, this is not giving you probably the answer you were hoping for, but I think we're all very aware of the system, like, challenges of we don't have enough services for people to actually get the help or the supports that they would need.
Yes.
I am, meeting with my counterparts in other cities and jurisdictions. We have meetings with provincial funders of healthcare and social services to continue to raise this. I know I cannot speak for the mayor, but I know the mayor has regular meetings as well and is trying to kind of advocate for this. I think we have been very open about this. The challenge is, again, we are not responsible for any healthcare services, but I know, again, our counterparts, like Addictions Mental Health and others, I think are trying to do exactly the same to really try to advocate for actual solutions, because I think we can all agree that that is what we need, and not just having a Band-Aid for a problem that requires, again, real long-term solutions. I think we all need to continue to advocate for that in our various roles. So I know that's not necessarily a very specific answer, but I know both on the senior staff and the political side, I know there's multiple conversations, and every time we have an opportunity, we will share that we need more support to really truly bring in actual solutions, because it is, and again, it's not just Kingston, but it is I would say a provincial or national challenge with the services. I don't know if my colleagues want to jump in on the other items that you've raised, Mr. Penley, but I will not try to talk all the time.
Okay. Well, they've definitely, a closed caption. They've been documented for sure, and so we have those on record. Tammy's been waiting very patiently with her hand up there. Tammy, would you like to ask a question now?
Yeah, actually, I want to ask questions and make some comments. I'm going to guess Ruth and Heather and Joanne, Fred, that you all got my email that I sent this morning. Okay, I want to begin with that. I really feel that there's been a gross misinterpretation of City Council's direction to staff. And it's an issue that I've actually started talking with Rob Hutchins, our district councillor, well before, well, the day after, I'm going to say, the May 12th meeting. I really feel that once again, the local community has been left out of the process, and that we kind of get drawn into this as a last minute thought. And it's very frustrating. It's very frustrating. Now, you all know that I've taken it upon myself to make connections with the ICH staff and campers and we've started to do some work. As it's been becoming very, very clear that the magnitude of the work that needs to be done is much greater than can be expected from the current campers in Bell Park. So, I mean, I've seen photographs, I have photographs, and I was going to include it with my email, but I really, you know, you all know, if you have been back there, and if you haven't, you should have been, as city councilors who are city staff who are working on this issue, there is a massive amount of garbage back there. And that needs to be cleaned up. There are piles of improperly discarded needles back in there, and they're scattered everywhere. And that needs to be cleaned up. And in order to give this pilot project a fresh start, wiping the slate clean, it isn't fair for you to take the current campers who are there, who may or may not be responsible for the debris that's been left back there, and make them responsible for cleaning it up. And it certainly isn't just the ICH's responsibility. The City of Kingston are the people that approved the tent city and Bell Park parking lot. The City of Kingston are the people who have allowed the illegal camping in Bell Park for 30+ years. So that issue is ongoing, and it really needs to be addressed. So that, for me, is going to be the #1 thing. And in meeting with the campers, that was the #1 thing that they were so gung-ho to get after, which was the garbage, the garbage, the garbage. And they're doing a job in the local area, which is great. And I know that they would be easily encouraged to expand that, but it isn't going to be something that's going to be done by a handful of campers. That's going to require city involvement. So that needs to be organized, and it needs to be organized soon before you go and invite more people to have a permanent campsite there. I understand that that's necessary. The encampments are necessary, and let's not kid ourselves. We can say 6-month pilot project, but in all reality, we all know that when we get back to Q3 for a final report before the pilot ends, that we're heading into winter, and those campers that are there will be there through the winter, because there will be a pause on eviction, because it's necessary for their safety and their survival throughout the winter. So unless the city is going to come up with some kind of miracle and a new tower, 11-story tower with 120 units in it, then great, then we can house them all. But that's not about to happen. So that's a big issue. So we need to get all the pieces of the puzzle together. There's a number of supporting agencies that are all participants with the Integrated Care Hub. There's a number of community support groups that are all in participation with the Integrated Care Hub. There's a number of bylaw enforcement agencies with the city that are somewhat responsible for Bell Park. And they all the pieces of the puzzle need to come together to deal with the issues that are back there currently before we move forward on anything else. And as for the notifications of these meetings, again, I feel like you guys have really missed the point on that, because it didn't even come out. This information didn't even come out until your presentation, Ruth, with the advisory committee. There's been no flyers, there's been no media coverage, there's been no news, if you're not connected to Get Involved Kingston, you're not even going to know this meeting is happening today. So you're not getting a full picture of what the local community is looking for or what they need to make this work. And it's been too long that it's been neighbors against campers, and it's not gonna fix itself. We have to fix it. So what are we going to do that? So with the camper survey that you've done, I've seen an online survey. Is that the survey that you provided to the campers?
Sorry, Rob, would you like me to jump in, Tammy, or?
Please,
Okay.
please.
No, it's not. We actually, with the partners worked on a survey, and I know the neighborhood also worked with the ICH on a survey, and they are actually very similar and very kind of aligned. So we have asked very similar, like I know city staff, street outreach, ICH, I know yourself, we always ask very similar questions. So those are different. It's a different survey. We're happy to share that with you, Tammy.
Sure, email me a copy. I would
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
And the campers that you spoke with, which campers in which campsites? Because I've seen your map and we all know they're scattered all throughout the city because not everybody wants to be in one little place. So which campers have been reached out to?
Heather, would you like to take that one?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Ruth. So we have worked with our partners, as Ruth said. So we have worked with street outreach on some other locations throughout the city. So downtown parks, City Park, Victoria Park, to name a few. There have been other locations as well that street outreach has been out and provided the survey to folks and have responses. And then from the integrated care hub in Bell Park area, we were there last weekend and did some surveying as well.
Okay.
And I think while we have you on the line, Heather, I think one of the main questions earlier in Tammy's statement too was about garbage removal and tackling the garbage problem as well.
Sure, absolutely. And yeah, we don't have them on the line, but we have our recreation and leisure folks work pretty regularly with the integrated care hub. And I know they were out last week and did a cleanup with, we had a third party come in and do that. And they continue to be in touch regularly and do those. And we have provided the garbage pickup and everything for those as well. So if there is another large area now, I'm sure that the integrated care hub staff will keep us informed, and we do get people out to do those cleanups.
Okay. Now, I'm just curious, what kind of responses did you get from the campers that you have interviewed?
So thank you, Tammy. I can start and Heather can jump on. So we actually, I would say it's really kind of, as much as we all have different ideas on kind of what would work, we definitely are also hearing different kind of desires from people that are unhoused. There's definitely people that are very keen on having a dedicated location so they don't have to feel like they have to move or get like asked to move around. There's definitely a lot of questions around, to your point, like garbage and how you know, how that would work, and how, again, like people that fought, like I think there is, again, a group of individuals that really want to kind of abide by the roles and responsibilities, or rights and responsibilities of utilizing a service should council approve that. But there's also the fear of, you know, what happens if people are not, and how will this be enforced? We are definitely also seeing kind of a mixed kind of response on where people would like to be. I think it was mentioned earlier, like there's definitely a group of individuals that would like to be very close to the integrated care hub and the services. There's also individuals that would actually not want to be in that area for a variety of reasons. So I will be quite frank, Tammy, I think we're really getting also a diverse kind of list of responses. Also some good insight in kind of what type of amenities people would like to or would need, you know, to be able to make a project like this successful. But again, we're still, like, we're still gathering information, and also happy to have a conversation with you on kind of what you've been hearing, so we can include that as well.
See, this is the kind of things that I'm thinking, okay, and it's really outside the box, but it's probably very much in keeping with what the campers are doing on a day-to-day basis. There's the past mess that obviously needs to be cleaned up. Let's go from today going forward. How do we work with the campers to not create more of the same issue? And when we're looking at the trash, that's simple enough. We can set up some kind of a program where the trash is gathered and located in a specific area. Now, it's been demonstrated that the campers are not going to come together wherever they're told to go. They're going to go where they want to go for whatever makes them feel comfortable, whatever makes them feel safe. So this pilot project should actually be enveloped over top of the whole city for whatever locations that they choose to go to, and work towards making some generalized rules or guidelines to help them keep some form of structure with that, so that we don't have, you know, out in the West End, piles of garbage and piles of dirty needles and stuff like that. And I think that that's very workable. Now, when you look at the cost, and I heard you speak to your issue about the outhouses at $4,000 a month. I used to do a lot of camping, and we used to dig a little hole, and we used to take a log and put it across a couple tree branches, and we hook our toilet paper there on the tree, and that was our toilet. And when we left that site, we would bury that hole. Now, I know that may seem barbaric to some people, but it's kind of like an outdoor outhouse. And I mean, I've wandered through campsites where I've come across areas that you go, okay, you got to turn around and go the other way because you found their outhouse that's unburied. It's more sanitary if it is buried, but it's not ideal either way. But again, if it's not in a scenario where it's going to run into lake water or rivers and stuff, it's more sanitary than being left out on like open ground. So is that stuff that we can look at for them? Because that's so simple that people just don't think of it, right? And the garbage collection, if they can find a container, even just barrels, you know, be the metal barrels, chances are they'll get used for fire bins, but they may also get used for garbage bins, and then have a collection system, just like our city garbage collection, that, you know, if they're way back in Bell Park and they can't manage to get all of the trash that has been generated out from there, that maybe they can put it along the road, which is closer to them and can be collected through City Works garbage program. And they go through there, you know, once or twice a week or whatever. Or maybe we can get a golf cart and have some of the crew from the ICH that are interested in work programs do that once a day or something, you know, like, I mean, there's all kinds of options for that kind of stuff. And with the bio bins and stuff like that, I know that the ICH has the portable bio bins for people to use, but when they get that aha moment after shooting up, they're not going to think, oh, I got to use my bio bin. That's the last thing on their mind at that second. Now, that doesn't mean that when they come out of that lull that they're going into, that they may not get to a point where they can go, oh shit, I left that on the ground, and pick it up. And any progress in that kind of area is going to be better than just staying stuck where we are now. So I think that with the ICH, they're more than willing to work with us, and they hear these issues and they know that they exist. Will we reach perfection on it? No, but we can make some headway on it at least. So I'm thinking that those are the kind of things that we really need to look at when we're looking at encampments. And it's not going to be in one specific area. It's going to have to be where the campers are. So this whole pilot project, I'm going to say, you know, forget the pilot project, just go with the pause on evictions, no more playing whack-a-mole, no matter where they are, and just try to implement some rules. I like to say respect. Mutual respect is a better option than rules, because as soon as you tell an addict it's a rule, don't touch that stick, they're touching the stick. That's just the way it goes. So just basics like that.
Thank you so much. And I love that statement too of, again, it might not be perfect, but we're making some progress, or we're working on it as well. I see Joanne, you had a comment to make based on what Tammy was discussing.
Absolutely, Tammy, thank you so much. And based on all of the conversations that you've had over the last few months with the ICH staff and the current residents at Bell Park, some of those initiatives are actually underway. So there is a cleaning crew schedule that is being developed currently as we speak, that Public Works is involved with also. And it's sounding very much like your thoughts around having individuals and the city teams go out into specific locations and bring the garbage back and then it be picked up. So that is absolutely underway, as is the discussions with Street Health around ensuring that there are more bio bins available. And as you mentioned, ones that are dedicated and screwed into a post or somewhere else themselves so that they're always accessible by individuals. So I just wanted to thank you for bringing those suggestions forward even earlier than this meeting, because some of those initiatives are certainly underway.
Perfect, perfect. And I know we have Fred with their hand up, and Lois has a question as well too. We're gonna go to a quick chat question as well, just to make sure we have equal representation here. Why does the city constantly concentrate these services in this neighborhood rather than other areas of the city?
I can jump on that.
Sure.
And I will have to let folks know that unfortunately I have another meeting at 4:30. So, but I know Heather and Joanne will be here, and there is another meeting on Wednesday. So please, if you want to join that meeting as well. And I also know there are a few questions around the notification, and Tammy, you touched on that as well. And I apologize. I know we're really trying to be responding to council's requests, and I do understand that this is a very last minute, and again we want to make sure that people, if you know there's another session on Wednesday, and we also are happy to have on any further conversations. What I will say on the, sorry, my son is just coming home here, but what I will say around the locations is we are investing. I know there's obviously been a lot of focus on the integrated care hub and the Bell Park area, and I know there's many very passionate neighbors on the call, which I'm really grateful for, in a sense of kind of trying to look at those longer term solutions and actually homelessness and housing solutions. We have been working on, as you know, there's a sleeping cabin project in Portsmouth and now Center 70 location. We are investing in dollars to add more transitional housing and interim transitional housing in the West End, in the 805 Whitley location. We are also have provided housing downtown with Lower Union. Again, I think as we've also identified, like there are there are encampments in all of our community. I know that obviously the bulk of them are in the ICH and Bell Park area, and that's why council did ask us to focus on that. But we've also found that, again, in conversation with individuals that are in encampments, that there's also people that would like to be in other areas of our community. So I know it's a question that we hear often around kind of the location of services and the location of individuals in need of services, and we're really trying to expand housing solutions across the community to balance that.
All right, thank you, Ruth. And let's see here. We have, I think next up was Fred with your hand up. First, to get you to unmute there, Fred. Sorry, I think you're still muted.
Okay.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
I don't know if you can see this picture. Anyway, that's this weekend. So six groups of people who were camping, as I mentioned earlier, on the east end of Bell Park, decided to vacate. And they've now spread out throughout the park. And they've all hidden their campsites very, very well. They've left, it took me 5 pictures to take 5 pictures to cover all the garbage that they left. There's half a dozen bicycles, stolen bicycles, because I talked to one of them. He said, oh yeah, they're stolen. There's one with a motor on it. I called the police. They were disinterested in responding to looking at the bicycles. What a lot of the campers do, if you put them in one particular spot, they will create a second spot where they can go for privacy, usually to do their drugs or for other reasons, human reasons. The cleanup, when the city does do the cleanup, and I would compliment them, that they did finally clean up the area that Ruth and Joanne saw last year in the woods near the sewer pipe. It took 1 year and 2 months for the city to finally respond to get rid of that worst pile of garbage where, Joanne, you spoke to one of the homeless people. 1 year and 2 months. Now, in the meantime, the ICH had sent its volunteers, paid volunteers to clean that area up. I don't know how many times I counted garbage bags were left there, partially filled. They just remain there month after month after month. So the effectiveness of the programs is somewhat similar to the fencing. You know, if you say, well, we've got security fencing up, but there's great big holes continuously in it, then the just saying those words doesn't work. The cleanup of the garbage. Yes, the city spends the thousands and thousands. Last week, when you said they came in and did a big cleanup, they did. Probably, I don't know, I estimated $10,000 to clean up that one encampment. Is that what you want to keep on doing? That money could be spent on rehabilitation. So I have a feeling that the money that's going to be involved in creating an encampment, like a sort of like a refugee camp, you know, with designated spots and toilets and things, the money to police, to create that and to police that, I would rather see the money put towards actual therapeutic services, because the majority, okay, let me stop here. Do we have a classification of the various kinds of homeless people? So we know we have the mentally ill, they need different programs. We have the drug addicted people, they need specific programs. We have the people who are temporarily out of luck. You know, they've been thrown out of an apartment because of whatever. They just need a helping hand to get back onto the job. Then we have the criminal element. You know, when I see 6 stolen bicycles laying in the park, and you can find them everywhere, near every encampment, there's an industry of refurbishing stolen bicycles. So we have a strong criminal element, which the police will not engage with because they've got some sort of directive from somewhere, don't engage with homeless people, unless you catch them breaking and entering or something. And then there's 5 distinct groups. So we don't have a program designed for each group. We keep lumping them all together. Okay, let's give them a camp to live in. It doesn't solve the problem. As much as I wrote in the winter, don't move them through the winter. The work they put in to create a shelter for survival, I said, stop moving them in the winter. But let's put more money into programs to help the individual groups. Let's identify the individual groups and work on that. And so I am, I love the park. That's why I live here in this area. You know, I'm on iNaturalist. I send pictures up of all the, 800 species of things we found in the park, and to see the continuous desecration. I can take you to toilet sites where there's buckets full of excrement still sitting there after the city's gone through there. Homeless people, and I'm lumping them all into one group now, have a different set of rules, and you almost have to get into their heads of what they need. And if they're drug addicted, then whatever reason they went on to drugs, providing them permanent shelter or better shelter is not going to solve their main problem. They all want to come off drugs eventually, and that's where the focus should be.
So back to your original statement, it goes with that disconnect between the reality of what's going on and the treatments available and things like that. We just want to make sure that we reiterate too that we can't speak for Kingston Police on any sort of crime things like that, or provincial programs as far as mental health goes. So we're going to speak definitely to the areas that we have. But and for sake of time as well too, Ruth, Heather, or Joanne, do you have any comments based on that? We have 4 people in line as well for questions as well. Thank you so much for sharing that, Fred. Ruth, Heather, Joanne, any further comments? I think you're already in contact as well, and definitely your comments have been recorded in this meeting for sure. So moving on next here, and I'm sorry, your name, Saida, is that correct?
It's Sayeda, though.
Sayeda.
I think that isn't Lois Burrows ahead of me. Just
I
based
apologize. Yes,
Yes.
Thank you so
Thanks.
much for that. Yes, Lois is actually before you.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me okay? I think I've unmuted. Thank you. Thank you, Sayeda. I just have a few questions and some comments. First of all, are we saying that 70 to 80 people are in these encampments and they're running the city of Kingston? So are there only 70 to 80 people? Secondly, we've had the last year to deal with all of this, because this has been going on now for quite some time, are we now going into another pilot, or why can't we use the last year, the results of that so-called pilot, and look at whether that was successful? And quite frankly, what I'm hearing from some of the residents that live in that area is it doesn't sound to me like it was very successful at all. So I don't believe in sleeping huts. I don't believe in tents. I think people have to have running water, and the fact that we are allowing people to live like that doesn't say much of us as a society. Secondly, my other question is, when council approved not removing people from Bell Park, my understanding was that that wasn't meaning that they would allow encampments all over the city. But yet it went ahead, and so nobody ever removed anyone else from any of the other encampments. And whether they be a few people or many people, I don't know. I do know that I don't agree with encampments all over the city. So my question is, once you go back to council at the end of the month, does that mean that the bylaw will be enforced for everywhere except where you have the improved, or where you're recommending approved encampments? Secondly, where in the rest of the city are you approving encampments? You said there was 3 locations. If you could just tell me what are the 3 locations? I understand one is Bell Park. The other thing is, how can you operate this with no on-site staff? Because I think I saw that on the slide, that there wouldn't be any staff on site. And I don't know if that was all I had. I think that's it.
Okay,
Thank
no
you.
problem. I think Ruth is going to speak to a few of those questions there.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I will start, and I think Heather and Joanne can jump in if I'm missing anything. So first of all, so the Encampment Protocol was initially approved in April 2021 and was paused in early November 2021 because of public health direction. Prior to that, we did not. There was not a pilot project or an actual project. This is, obviously, we've been trying to address encampments through the protocol and try to work with individuals on solutions. Obviously, the reality is I think it's been made clear by some of the other people on the call that there is limited options for a variety of individuals. And I think it was Mr. Pentley that mentioned it as well. Like, we have a group of 70 to 80 individuals in our community that, and it's a fluid number that we, again, in partnership with Street Outreach and Integrated Care Hub and other partners, are aware of. And we know there are different solutions needed for those individuals. It's not a one size fits all solution. I appreciate your comments, and again, we're obviously taking note of all of that. Council did, and I know there's been some confusion after the May 12th meeting. We did, as staff, again, and in the conversation with Council on May 12th, they did, basically their direction was to continue to pause the Encampment Protocol, which is a protocol that applies to the whole community. And both CAO Hurdle and myself made that really clear to Council as well in the meeting, that that would not just be for the Bell Park ICH area. We did also mention that should there be health and safety concerns, that we would need to continue to move people along, but we have made that I think clear in Council, and I do recognize that there was some confusion on that. So as for the other locations, so we are looking at, again, as per Council's request, at locations in close proximity to ICH and Bell Park, but we're obviously also hearing from people that are unhoused that they would also be, and some individuals would be looking at another location. So we have looked at a multitude of locations that could and are hopeful that we will be able to have a third location that we can present to council. We had a few locations that fell through due to a variety of reasons. But I know that might not answer all of your questions, but I just wanted to touch on those. Heather or Joanne, I don't know if you would want to add anything. If not, no worries.
Could I ask one other question? You just said you have a third location in mind. Is that something that you can't share with us? And will you be consulting with the public in that location before that goes ahead? And sorry, my last question again is, if you come up with those 3 locations, does that mean that you will enforce the bylaw in all the other parks in Kingston?
Thank you. At this point, I cannot disclose because we haven't finalized, and we will do our best to engage as per council's direction. We will also, to your last question, want to come back with, should council agree with 2 or 3 or how many sanctioned encampments locations, we also would come back with council to say the encampment protocol would then also start again, meaning that people would not be able to camp in other locations.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ruth. And now the very courteous Saida for your question, because I believe you're up next.
Thanks. I have a few comments and I think I have a question, but we'll see what emerges. Mostly I just want to say I have a lot of gratitude for people's comments today, and I just want to especially say thank you, Tammy, for a lot of I just really appreciate the way that you hold the complexity of this issue as someone who lives so close to there. So just thank you, because yeah, this is, I don't live as close to the ICH as Tammy does, but I do live a short walk away, and this is something I care about, both the encampment and supporting people who are unhoused in our community. And a couple of things that have come to mind for me, like I guess, some comments about the bigger picture are that, when I think about the ICH, like their approach is informed by harm reduction, right? So the idea is that, there's lots of people in our community who are who are experts on that, and I'm not, but I just think that it happens slowly, right? So I guess we don't have enough rehab beds, but also people aren't going to just immediately go into rehab, even if all those beds were available, and choose to go on a road to recovery and stay drug free. These are really complicated issues. And I just want to say that because I think that, sometimes I think we focus a lot on that. If people could just if people could just get access to this and get better, then these things will go away. And it's just this is a really long journey. And that's part of, our community and how we help people be well. Right. So I just wanted to say that because I recognize that yes, some people who are there do want that, and some of them don't right now. And I want to live in a community where that's also okay. That people can choose not to do that right now, and they do it when they're ready. And I think that's why the ICH is successful, because they don't rush people, right? They're giving people access to services that they need to help keep them safe, and then also help them access other things when they become available or if they're available. But yes, there's not enough rehab opportunities in Kingston, that's 100% true. I also just wanted to talk a bit about the bike theft and things, because I've lived in the city for 20 years, and it's a rite of passage for people to have their bike stolen more than once, probably, and not to be I'm not trying to dismiss that. I've had multiple bikes stolen, so have lots of people, and all of that happened before I lived near an encampment, So I also just want us to kind of recognize that there are problems that are, exacerbated by certain realities, and some that already existed. Same with petty crime. I've had my, shed broken into twice and my car broken into twice, and all of that, 3 of those 4 things happened before the ICH opened, So I don't know, I just want to give that as context, because I just think that some of these are broader social challenges that, I worry sometimes we think that there was a golden age to return to, and it never existed, I also just think that I want everyone to have a home. I don't want us to have encampments. And I also think we don't have enough housing right now. We can't offer every single person who's in a tent right now somewhere to live that they can afford and that's clean and accessible to their needs. We just don't have that. And so I hear people's concerns about encampments. So I also want to say that, like, I think that, like, no one's figured out homelessness or like ways to support people. And so while I know this encampment has challenges, or this pilot, I feel thankful that the city's trying to do this, because we need to try different things to figure stuff out. Like, I heard city councilors talk about how they were very critical of the sleeping cabins, and then they were proved wrong, you know. And again, it's not a solution, but it's something that gives people some more choice and opportunity in the absence of other things. And so I guess I see the encampment pilot as a way for that. And having said that, Tammy brought up a lot of things that I didn't think about that I think are really good suggestions, you know, around how do we actually address the garbage issue? How do we, and Tammy made a comment about, like, is this going to be perfect? No, but like, we can make headway. And that's really how I think about this too. And I think, you know, she expressed that perfectly, because like, how do we just close the gap? How do we keep closing the gap between like where things are and where we want them to be, and recognize that any intervention is not going to be perfect? And so that's really the lens I use. And so I want to offer some feedback with that in mind, which is I did go to the housing and homelessness meeting last week, and I did see the suggested rules and regulations. And so I printed that out and went and go talk to some of the people I know who stay near the ICH to ask them what they thought about them. And so some of the things I heard were, you know, some people had a reaction to rules, which is, you know, can these be guidelines, or how do we recognize, you know, so that was one comment that came up a couple times. There was also just this comment, multiple people brought up the fact that, and again, it's not perfect, but there are sort of collective governance practices that exist in encampments. So, you know, like people sort of self-organize how to respond to bad behavior. People get shunned, or people, you know, things happen that kind of, that work its.
Oh no, what a horrible time to freeze. I think the screen got frozen. Is that frozen for everyone, not just me? Okay. We can definitely get back once we're reconnected there. Let's give it just one more second of courtesy. Oh, okay. We'll get back to Saida in just a quick second here. And I think next on our list, and we'll definitely come back, is Paul. Oh. No questions from, I don't see, okay. No questions there, okay. And we had Val with their hand up. Oh, Paul has unmuted. Paul or Val? And Heather and Joanne, can you confirm with me that everyone can hear me and everything's going okay?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so yeah, we're just we have okay, so we all right. Well, we can give a couple minutes if we have Paul still there. He has a question, and we had Val there, but we don't seem to have them with us right now. And definitely say when she comes back. Is there any other questions from anyone in the room at the moment? I think Tammy, did you have your hand up briefly?
Okay, finding that hands up button is not the easiest thing.
I apologize.
I just heard that there was an actual draft set of guidelines. Would it be possible to get a copy of that sent email as well, please? And I know that there's been conversations with the campers in regards to them self-monitoring for things like trespassers or some criminal behavior and stuff like that. And they're feeling that a peer pressure or peer support model will work to a degree for that. If that's not successful, I'm just wondering with the guidelines that the city is putting in place, if they're going to look at having people that will enforce those rules, what that might look like would it be a security company, would it be police patrols, that kind of thing.
Okay. And Tammy, do you mind if we stick up a real quick pin on this question? Because I think Sadie just joined just by phone here, I'm assuming here. Joanne, do you want to make note of that question, or Joanne and Heather, just that's the security focus there? And the phone number I have on the screen just joined us. Is that you, Sadie?
Are you talking about me?
No, we got you, Val. Val, you'll be up next. I saw you reconnected, but we had someone join us by phone.
Hi, that's me. It's Seda. Sorry about that.
Oh, Seda, perfect. Okay. You can definitely continue. Sorry, you got cut off there.
No, thank you. Sorry about that. And so maybe I'll just try to be quick. So some of the things that I heard was just wanted to talk about how people sort of have their own rules and sort of and enforce them among each other, and that it's also empowering for people to be able to kind of co-create and manage that. And again, it's not perfect, but it's something. Some of the other things that I heard from people were, and I don't know if the 15 by 15 is meters or feet, but there was a concern that with some folks that maybe that's a little too small for some people's needs. There's also, the quiet hours starting at 9 p.m. is also a challenge. And I know that, I have compassion for people who live nearby who maybe that 9 p.m. is really necessary, but I just want to flag that could be an issue for some people to actually meet, or, in the spirit of trying to create rules that people can stick to, like how might that be something that people talk about to figure out if that, can it be later than that? Also, if you can't have stuff outside of your tent, will the city provide bins so that people can have extra storage space? Because, tents are a very small space, or can there be things that can be outside? So again, how do we be realistic about how many belongings people have and that they have nowhere else to put them? Also, there was also comments about, just kind of reasserting or reminding that access to water, hydro, and bathrooms are really helpful, and especially dumpsters. Like everybody talked about the need for dumpsters, and also just kind of there were a few other comments which maybe I'll just include in the survey, but just I really wanted to kind of reiterate that if it's possible to be fine-tuning these, I just think that maybe some of the ways that this is written could be a challenge and may not actually be doable. And then I think it leads to questions about what does enforcement look like? And if everyone at a camp is fine, for example, with a dog being off leash, I'm thinking about Cuddles, you know what I mean? There's one dog in particular that is very nice and everyone seems to get along with. I'm afraid of dogs and I'm not afraid of this dog. I just, how do we be flexible and understanding towards the needs of people who might be there and what that looks like, so that if they can agree on some other practices, can that also become what happens, so that, again, in the spirit of helping this be successful and helping people also be part of how to create their living environment, anyway, thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments, definitely, for sure. And I think we have Paul back as well. Paul, you have some comments? Looks like you're unmuted. Unfortunately, we can't hear you. Am I the only one not hearing Paul? Okay. Paul, I think maybe the best bet too is to type your answer.
What about now? Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect. We got you.
Okay. So I heard a lot of talk about the rules here and how that a lot of the campers don't think that they're fair and square and everything else. But society lives by rules. Okay. And we know from experience that the people over here don't care about rules. Otherwise, they wouldn't be trespassing. They wouldn't be stealing. They wouldn't be doing things like this. So you can set out this set of rules that you're talking about, which is all fine and dandy if everybody abides by them. But self-governing will not work for the simple fact that the strong will make up the rules and change the rules to suit their purposes. And the weaker ones in the group won't really have a say, or they'll get assaulted or whatever. We see it every day. Okay, I live right beside it. I can look out my window right now and see the encampments. So we know what goes on over there. How is this, and the police are of no help to us whatsoever. So how are these rules going to be enforced and adhered to? Okay, because all these people are going to say is, well, I don't like that rule, so I'm not going to abide by it. Like, you know, fireworks at 3 o'clock in the morning. If that happened in any other area of the city, the police would be right there to give the people hell over it. But here, it just goes on. It's a normal fact here. It happens, and nobody does anything about it. You phone the police and they say, well, we've got more important things to worry about. You know, so how are these rules going to be enforced?
Okay, thanks so much for your question, Paul. Joanne and Heather, we're talking about enforcing the guidelines and what we're talking about maybe instituting in these areas. Unfortunately, again, we can't speak for enforcement on the Kingston police level of things, but for our perspective and from the guidelines that are going to be set apart on the actual encampment or the safe space itself, how will they be enforced?
Well, I think it's a good question, and it's certainly a question that we'll take back to council, because again, what city staff are trying to do at this point is hear the concerns of you, the individuals in the vicinity, and from the residents themselves. So when we take all of that information back to council, especially when we talk about the fact that the campers have very clearly expressed a want to self-govern, mostly are happy to follow some rules, but want to self-govern, and that the community has some concerns around that and feels that there should be some type of enforcement activity. That's all information that we will ensure that we're capturing or are capturing and will bring back. And then I believe that likely council will make some decisions as to what model it is that they choose to move forward with. And so I don't have the answer for you now, Paul. But again, I mean, we recognize that, you know, if there are guidelines to follow, that there's no point in having guidelines if they won't be maintained, and there won't be an effort made by all parties to agree on those. So we understand that, and we'll be taking this information back to council.
Okay, but like, you know, like the other night at 9 o'clock, here's a guy running a chainsaw, cutting down trees in the park for an hour, you know, like, and cutting up firewood and that, right? If they're not going to be allowed to have campfires, I woke up this morning to the smell of garbage burning. You know, like, these things, I know to somebody they don't sound like much, but when it happens constantly, it gets to be a little much, you know. So something has to be done to mitigate these types of problems that are continually occurring, and nobody's doing anything about it, right? And we don't have a contact for each particular, like, if there's a fencing issue, we don't even know who the fencing company is that's been contracted to look after it, right? When FMCS looked after the fence, it was fixed within a day, you know? But now that it's through social services and housing, and they've contracted out a fence company, for instance, we don't know who to get in touch with anymore. Okay, because if you email FMCS, they say, well, we don't, you know, it's not under our jurisdiction anymore. It's somebody else's. The same with the fire. The only way to get the fires to stop is to phone the fire department and have them come and put it out. But that seems like an awful waste of resources over a stinky fire, you know, and there's nobody to contact when we hear them back there cutting trees down. Okay, like, I can see all this right from my yard, right? And nothing gets done about it. So that's what I'm saying, is that some kind of system needs to be put in place where, and what happens to the people who do break the rules? Then where do they go? You know, like, what happens to them? You know, is the city going to use the same excuse that the ICH uses? Yeah, well, if we ban people from the property, there's a chance they could overdose. Well, you know, like, if they're not going to follow rules, what good are they in place for? Okay, sorry, that's my beef, but
Yeah, and it seems like you're sharing your experiences, and really it's focused on some of the same areas. And Joanne, do you have any further comments to those areas at all? I think the security features and stuff are going to be decided by council, and what kind of direction they go forth based on that. And then as far as enforcement goes beyond and above that with Kingston Police and such, that's unfortunately we can't speak to that.
Yeah, unfortunately not, but Paul, thank you so much for being on this call and for your emails and for being in contact with us on a continuous basis. Your voice is heard. We're taking your comments back. That's for sure. And we'll see what comes of the special meeting on the 29th. Until then, there's some answers I just don't have at this point, I'm afraid.
And the next question, we're running out of time. We've got about 15 minutes left here. Val's been super patient, and you have comments or questions, Val? Yes.
There, you can hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
I will try. I won't take up 15 minutes, and I've tried to assemble my thoughts into a big picture scenario, but I do have one detailed thing that I'd like to go over. First of all, there are lots of really good ideas here, and that's awesome. Kudos to everybody who's here and all the people who have dared to speak out. And I will tell you that I am a left-winger, and all my little old lady friends are left-wingers and take food to the people of Bell Park, and we participated in the cabins, but there's been a little bit of a hesitancy for people to speak out in my zone against any of the problems associated with persons who are unhoused, because we don't want to be seen seemingly unsympathetic. So my first point, big picture, is that there isn't enough. There isn't enough of a whole lot of things. And as a society, we do have resources, and we do have a lot of social resources, and we've got lots of taxation money coming in at the municipal level and the provincial level and so on. I think we need to apply more resources to the hugeness, to the breadth of this problem and the depth of this problem. About the addiction thing, I worked in Joyceville Penitentiary. I've been in social service type positions, and I'd like to, that's a really complicated problem. People don't get better from addictions in a big hurry. But anyway, so on the subject of not enough, one of the sub-themes is unprotected, uninformed, don't know where to go. And that applies a little bit to all of the people involved, to all of us who have opinions, to some of the homeless people. But I do want to speak. I've had to screw my courage to the sticking place to speak out about some of the problems that I feel as I have seen or heard about or may have experienced. As I'm kind of like one of the common ordinary people. That there are times when we don't feel protected. You know, if you see something, you call a bylaw officer. Well, I'm sorry, we're not applying the bylaws. Oh, well, I feel unsafe. You know, and the police have told me, I've had a conversation with the police officer, you can't call them when there's someone encamped in your park. But that problem of not feeling protected by bylaws, not feeling protected by police who won't go and see if there's a kid's bike over at Bell Park that someone has stolen, that's just plain sad. And again, we need more resources. Obviously, we need more police protection involved, more informed and educated police protection to deal properly with the homeless problem, unhoused problem. uninformed. People didn't know about this meeting. I was at Skeleton Park Arts Festival. This meeting had all kinds of conversations. I've been in this area forever. I don't know why nobody knew about this meeting. I knew about it because bless Heather, she sent me an email because I actually did complain about an encampment in Skeleton Park, and I'm not ashamed of that. And I think 6 months ago I would have been, because I felt silenced about speaking out about the fact that I know that there are kids that didn't want to go in the park when there was an encampment around the cannon and there was weird stuff going on. And kids go by that place every day to go to Central Public School, and they've been doing that for years. And to have one child who is afraid to go through the park on his way home from school is one too many. So there you go. Not enough resources, feeling of unprotection, being uninformed, not knowing where to turn. When I called, I actually did say, well, can I talk to your supervisor? Can I talk to your supervisor? And something was done about that encampment, but it was another encampment actually. The first phone call, the bylaw officer said, well, I just can't help you out. And it's like, no bylaws, nowhere, nowhere to go with this problem. It was only because I pushed and asked for supervisory communication. So I think that we need to be careful about the divisions that occur because of that feeling of being unprotected and uninformed and feeling unsafe. Second point, this is a jump shift to a minor point. Well, maybe it's not minor, but it hasn't come up yet. So I had a conversation with a police officer outside my house. I live in Skeleton Park one night, and he said all kinds of interesting things like, well, I don't live in this area and I don't want to live in this area. And, I understand that. I mean, this area isn't for everybody. I do prefer to be in a mixed community. I don't prefer to be in a community where I feel unsafe. But among other things, I said to him, the population has changed here. Like I keep seeing new faces. Like I used to work in the penitentiary system. I'm not afraid to, communicate with people or look them in the face. And it seems like there are an awful lot of new people here who are walking around with carts. And he said, oh yeah, there are. I said, you mean like there are more gravitating to this area? And he said, I'm pretty sure of that, because what happens is that, if they get out of the drunk tank in Belleville, they have to take them somewhere and they'll say, well, I want to go to Kingston. And so then we get more people coming into the area who are from out of area. And I understand, it's not the first time I've heard that. And one of the things I was kind of like taken aback by that, because I thought, my goodness, we have enough people here. We aren't even dealing well enough. There's not enough for the people who are already here. He said that I think this is worth adhering to, and maybe somebody can pass this along to council, that it's not just effective to deal with this as a municipal problem. Neither is it effective to deal with this as a downtown community or Skeleton Park community problem. It should be there should be a much, much bigger picture that we're looking at in providing resources. So bring Belleville in, bring Brockville in. He said, look at building a regional support for these people and offering many different solutions. And I think that's an important thing to think about, so that people from Napanee don't all end up here. Because I think an increase in our population has not been spoken of. And if we go to a lot of trouble to provide better resources, we're going to draw people. But is that what we want? And I think that the Lower East Side in Vancouver, what I heard was that somebody in it was Calgary or Edmonton or something, the city went to all the people who were homeless in that area and gave them tickets to Vancouver, and that's how the Lower East Side got started. So I haven't verified that. But when I heard that, I thought, because I walked through the Lower East Side. It's, sorry, it's my so I think we need to be awfully careful. Yeah. I'm on a camera here, sweetie. I'm in a meeting. There you go. Those are the little, yeah. The last, what I forgot to say on my first point was that I hope to goodness somebody is just saying no encampments in areas where there are children, playgrounds, people walking to work at their jobs, a lot of people hanging around, using it as a community space. I think we need to be very careful about where we allow encampments, that those places where we allow them and do apply the bylaws, where we can have some protection and feel safe, that we need to be really careful about keeping some public spaces free of encampments. I'm done. Thank you for listening.
No worries, no worries. Thank you for sharing your thoughts for sure. And in particular, the area too of out of town encampments and people from out of town maybe being in encampments here. Joanne, do you have any insight into that? Because I seem to recall there's information about that there is some movement amongst communities and such, and so maybe a widespread approach is needed.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point. Thanks for raising it, Val. We do know that there are some individuals who prefer a more transient type of lifestyle, and we are geographically sort of located between three very large cities, Toronto being one, Ottawa and Montreal. And so it's normal and it's not uncommon. I used to work in York region, and the Highway 7 corridor was certainly a well-traveled route for individuals. And for a number of different reasons, a lot of individuals may have lost resources or not had resources anywhere else and are trying to build a community in a new location where there are services and supports for them. Some people have moved out of town for safety reasons. It's different for every single individual who leaves wherever the town they're from is. The challenge for us becomes, you're right, we have limited services and supports in the region. So our Housing First model really looks at assisting individuals who are looking for housing in Kingston, because we can't look outside of this region. We just don't have the resources or manpower to be doing that. So the reality is, if an individual comes to the city and wants to stay here and build a life here and work with our Housing First teams to find housing, we would hope that they would get that support and assistance here. But for those individuals who might just be passing through, again, maybe we can facilitate that assistance for them as well and link them up or make warm referrals to other service providers in other areas. And I think that that's how our service providers are sort of working at this point in time, because they too see that some people don't want to stay permanently and they want to help them as much as they're helping those who do want to stay. But thank you for bringing it up. It's a great point.
Oh, just need you to unmute there. Sorry.
I'm talking too much, aren't I? Because you've only got 2 minutes left.
Oh,
Well,
that's okay. Well, and the thing is too, we have another meeting on Wednesday. Everyone's definitely more than welcome to come. We have the Get Involved page where you can definitely put this. These are very simple questions in the survey. It's not a complex survey, but it's the kind of paragraph answers. So you can put in a lot of information there. We also have housing at Cityofkingston.ca. I think everyone on this call more or less is referenced talking to one of these folks directly by email and such like that too. So I'd say keep that conversation going, absolutely for sure. But in fairness, to have everyone have their say as well too, I might just do one more circle here really quick, if that's okay with you, Val, and then maybe a couple minutes at the end if you want to follow up.
Well, I probably have said enough.
Okay. Next up is Fred. And we just have a couple minutes for Fred. And I think Tammy was last, but I think Tammy, you brought your hand down, but it's okay, perfect. Yeah, Tammy and then Fred. Or sorry, Fred and Tammy.
I'll go back to my original point. The ICH is in the wrong place. We could write a book about the reasons. I think we probably as a community have already written to the city hundreds and hundreds of pages of examples of why an establishment such as the ICH. Now, when I say that, In no way do I take away from the work that Ashley and Amanda and Justine are doing there in managing that place. When I make a comment like that, it is on a higher agency level, that the ICH is in the wrong place. It should never have been in a community such as closely knit at this with retail business and commercial businesses around. Number two, to add an additional population to the ICH just exacerbates the existing problems, which are very, very well documented and acknowledged by Dr. Moulton in her report. We need to put more emphasis and use the available resources. As Val mentioned, there's a lot of money around, but it's not being properly allocated to help the people to the next step of their betterment. We're just, the word is, we're just recycling the same people in the same system in the same fashion, and they're not getting better. That's why they're overdosing. That's why they're dying. So we need more emphasis on the provincial push for the provincial government to do something. And I think we could open up a whole nother topic of how do we deal with the existing population. And I stress there are 5 different categories of homeless people that we're lumping all together. We need 5 distinct programs, properly funded, and then we can deal with them and help the persons who need help in the proper fashion according to their needs. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fred. Tammy.
I'd just like to ask staff to compile a list as requested in my email of the contact information, be it phone number, email, 24-hour availability for the points that I put in my email, which are trash cleanup from Bell Park, the biohazard material cleanup from Bell Park, law enforcement the destruction of the natural forest and the animal habitat of Bell Park, and construction fence maintenance. So if the staff could put that together and send that out via email, that would be greatly appreciated. And what I'm looking for there is an accountable point of contact, because we have had experience where we are contacting certain individuals and then we don't get a response. So just someone that's going to be accountable and responsible for that would be great. And Val, I just wanted to say I posted a comment that was quoted from the Ontario Ministry of Health when they provided the funding for the 2-year extension on the ICH, where they basically invited all Ontarians to come get the services that are provided here. So that is why you're seeing the influx of people to Kingston. Other cities are clearing campsites and we're building bigger ones. So they will
that
go where
request
the
for that
resources are.
information, Heather and Joanne, is that something you have in the works or something you can provide, or something that's being worked on?
Yeah, we're working on that, Rob, and we'll certainly get that back to Tammy and we can share with other participants as well.
Okay, absolutely perfect. Oh,
I have to say something. You got to do more than work on it. You got to put out an all points bulletin and say, no. Is this a municipally controlled facility or not?
Not anymore. It's provincially funded.
The Ontario government is controlling this facility.
It's provincially funded.
It's provincially funded. Are they controlling it? Or is it the municipality? Well, somebody needs to answer that question. Like
Val,
that,
just give us a quick sec. I'm the facilitator here, and I'm not subject matter expert in this. So, and unfortunately, we had Ruth who had to leave for a conflict of another meeting too. So I can give Heather and Joanne a couple seconds to collect their thoughts, and then if you want to answer that question, Heather.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Rob.
Thank you.
So the Integrated Care Hub is funded by the province. The municipality does add a little bit of funding to that. It is not the majority by any means. They are now responsible to the Ministry of Health for their reporting back and the metrics that the ministry have set up with them. And as for the, I guess that's it. That's how it works. There is agencies that are are responsible and they receive their funding from the Ministry of Health.
May I say something?
Sure.
Did who voted that in, who allowed that? Did those people know that the municipality is not in charge of the ICH? I am absolutely stunned by that. And thank you, Tammy, for pointing that out, because everybody here should know that. I try to be informed. I've never heard that before. I thought it, so we're inviting people. We're inviting more people into an area where the point of this meeting is to get more, because there's not enough. I like, you guys, come on, that's ridiculous.
Maybe I can interject a little bit. So these services and supports primarily are for individuals who choose to access them. So there's no proving where you live or where you come from at the door. There never will be. At this point in time, if you're homeless, unfortunately, you're unhoused and homeless, and that's a challenge in itself. So anyone who reaches out to the ICH for support will get the best support and resources they possibly can from the organization, because that's what their commitment to the clients is. So I don't believe that there's any marketing material or anything that I've ever seen that would lead me to believe that the ICH or Trellis is marketing to anybody from outside of the Kingston city limits, but they cannot stop anyone from coming either, because we are still a province where we're lucky, and in a country where we're very lucky that we can come and go with ease. And I don't think any of us would want to lose that privilege and freedom. So it's definitely a resource that people can access, but there's no marketing campaign to draw more people in, as far as I'm aware. So Tammy, if you can find that and point us in that direction, that'd be great. But I don't think that was meant as a draw to bring more individuals in.
I just put the link from the Ontario government website where that comment that quotation came from, in the comments. So it is now officially a Ministry of Health establishment. So it is them that they answer to, and it is them that provides their funding for the additional 2 years.
So am I the only person that didn't know this?
Apparently, sorry. You didn't get the memo.
I didn't get
Alright.
that. Oh, I just wonder if all the people who are living up around Catroches know this.
Well, thank you for sharing that link, Tammy, because that is a source link for that information for sure. And we are now about 10 minutes over. And so importantly, our platform here is going to be taken up by another meeting before long. Is there any other final comments? We can probably open up for about 3 more minutes to finalize that, and then we can go from here. I'm going to share this handy dandy little screen here. So thank you all for coming, for sure. And again, we have those other means to definitely continue this conversation, continue your thoughts, keep on coming them in. The engagement's going to be open for a short while now as well. And so you have the Get Involved Kingston page, housing at cityofkingston.ca. There's direct phone numbers on the engagement page as well. And so there's many means that you can keep sharing this information, these experiences, and this feedback on this project as well. But I want to thank you all for joining. And if you want to join us again on Wednesday, we'll be doing this again from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. And the links will be on the Get In site. That's on the city calendar. It's been broadcasted to social media. And please tell your friends and tell your associates, and we'd love to have you for the next meeting. Thank you so much for everyone for joining us. Is there any final comments? Wonderful. Seeing none, then I'll be ending the meeting now. And thank you all for joining us.
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
everyone.
Robin. Thank you, everyone.